Welcome csc121 to ex4TipTaxCalc, or if you call it TaxTipCalc, either way, we're doing just a little calculation of tip and tax and a meal, things that you may encounter, which you'd probably use a calculator, but we're going to do a little calculator here just as a learning activity in Python. So this is a finished sample here, so I'm going to start with this one and just run it, and I'll use the same value every time so I know, and I'll just use $20 because I know if I do 25% tip on $20 bill, I know that's going to be $4. Or actually $5, I'm sorry. 25% tip is $5, 5 times 4. Okay, so your meal is $20 and the tip is $5, and then there's your total with tip and tax. And what we're going to do, or at least the way I have it set up, or at least the way I do it, is I base my tip on the meal, not on the meal and tax. You might look at the total and tip on that, but I tip on what the meal is, what your bill is. I don't add tip to the tax. So we're going to take the tax on the meal, which is what it is, and then we're just going to add our tip on top of everything at the end. So you just have 1 or 2 lines here that display everything. If you did it in 3 lines, that's okay here. We just have some calculations to do here also, so it shows up as currency. And I'm going to do this one from scratch. I'm not going to do one, although maybe I'll copy this one just to save some time here. And I'll go here and I'll create a brand new one, and I'll do a repel. By the way, I always go over here to my repels, but if you go over here into settings, it gives you a little button for new repel. So you can do it that way. And it does say, do you want to start a new Python repel? So it does whatever one you're in. So that's a little kind of help here. And I'm going to call this ex4TipTaxCalc. And I'll do it V since I'm recording a video. All right, and I'll just paste in that first couple parts here. So meal input is enter meal amount, tip percent. I'm just going to call this tip right now. Now we have 2 inputs here, and we're just going to have you put in 15, 20, or 25, or anything in between there. And we're not putting anything in case you put something outside of there, but if you put in that, it's just an example there. And so you're just going to put in an integer. You're not going to put percent, you're not going to put 0.25, anything like that. So what we're going to do, since it is going to be an integer for tip, I'm going to just make sure I make it int ahead of time, because we are going to do calculations. It's not going to just go right to a string. So remember, anything that comes from an input prompt is going to be a string, but since we're going to do calculations, let's make it an integer right away. We could do that right in this prompt. And for meals, since you might put cents in there, even though you might just put 20 or something to test it out, obviously your meal may have cents on it, so it may be some decimal. So we're going to make that a float, so that's already done ahead of time. And so that's the way we're going to start. So that's all we're going to need for input. Now we also have a value, and we could put this up here too. We're going to put a value of tax, and that's actually the tax rate for New Jersey, which is 6.625. And now you could actually take this value and just multiply it by 0.01, or you can divide it by 100, because remember, to use it as an actual percent, remember percents, you got to move the decimal back 2 places, so it would really be 0.06625. So you can do it this way, or you can actually divide it by 100. You could do it that way. Either way will be fine. So whatever you want to do with that, or you could just put in 0.062, 6625. But if you look it up, you'll get this amount, so we'll just divide that by 100. So we have all the information that we need. And as far as our output, what we want to say here is, I'll put a comment here for output, just to separate it. And I want to put, first of all, we'll do a print statement. And inside there, I'll start to make a string, and I'll say, and then I'll just put curly brackets here, because I'm not sure what I'm going to put in there yet, but obviously that'll be meal. And I'm not sure what I'm going to use yet, because our tip may get converted, but I'll put tip in there for now, because right now it would be 25. It would be your input, so we might have something called tip amount or whatever, but I'll just let that for now. And you could put a period at the end if you want, I guess. And we'll put our F strings here, because if we're going to use this method, we need F strings. And then I'll just copy this and put this after it. And this one is going to say your total with tip and tax. So this is the total out of pocket. Your total out of pocket with tip and tax is, and we're not actually mentioning what the tax is. It doesn't matter, because it'll just be added on. And we're going to put here, I guess we'll put a value called total, because we'll probably have to add it up. So we'll put total in there, even if we don't have it yet, and that's why we're getting a message here, because there's some things that aren't here yet. Oh, and I messed this up. I need to have a curly bracket there. So I'm getting a message up here because there's undefined things. Undefined means, hey, you're using a variable total, but you don't define it anywhere. And that's because we will define it in our calculation. So these are our inputs. So maybe I'll just, label that nicely. And then down here, I'll do my calcs, label that nicely. You could put a space there if you want. So we need some calcs here. So we know what our meal is, and we need to figure out our tip on our meal. So our tip amount is going to be, and I'll call it tip amount. We'll do some calculations within this one. So I'll just call this tip amount, and I'll abbreviate it so it's not so long. Our tip amount is, and it's going to be our meal times, and whatever our percentage of our tip is going to be. So this is going to be 25 or whatever, but it's actually going to have to be converted to a decimal. So it's going to be basically your tip divided by 100, or if you wanted to do your tip times 0.01, we'll do it two ways. So since we did 100 up there, you could do it like that. Now, just to make sure, and I need another multiplication in here, just to make sure we got this right, I'm going to make sure that this goes first, that it's multiplying our meal by that. So I'll kind of force that, because I think it may come out to be the same anyway, but I'll force this. So whatever my tip is, 25 times 0.01, so that'll be like 0.25 times my meal. That'll give me my tip amount. So that's the part that goes here. So I'll even change this, because this is going to be tip amount. That's what it's going to be here. If it's $5 or whatever it is, that'll be there. So that's my tip amount. So I'm doing kind of two things in here. I'm multiplying my meal by that tip amount, okay? And then I'm also going to get my tax kind of the same way. My tax is going to be, it's going to be the tax amount, and I'll abbreviate it the same way. Is basically going to be my meal, and it's going to be times the tax, because that's what we have up here, and we already converted that to divided by 100, so we already have that. So whatever our meal is, $20 times whatever, so we have our tax amount that's going to be added on, and then we can do a total. So then the next thing we could do is just put a total, and that should be meal plus tax plus tip. Seems like it's easier than when I did it the first time. First time I did it, I had all these different things here, and we may have some extra stuff to do. Look at all these. Well, I don't have it divided up, but it seems like I have a lot more lines of code here after the inputs, and some things I did after. I floated things after the fact and stuff like that. But this seems like it should work. It seems like I have everything I need. And let me just match up my variables. I have tip amount here. I have meal. And then my total should be my total out of pocket. So I have meal, I have my tax, and actually this is wrong because this should be tax amount, and then this should be tip amount. So I didn't have those right. So now I should have those right, and we don't need any parentheses because they're just going to add them all together. So whatever my $20 plus whatever my tax amount is and whatever my tip amount is, $5 will give me my total. So I think I have everything I need here. Let me run it just to see if it works okay. And I'll put in 20. And I'll give a 25% tip, and your meal is $20, your tip is 5.0, and your total out of pocket with tip and tax is $26,325. That's actually correct, except it's not formatted nicely. And to format it nicely, and I actually gave you a handout that has all these different things on it for formatting. And what we're going to do here, I'll just show you the easiest way to do this, to format it for currency, is going to be actually to go here for meals. And this matters too, because you don't want 20.0. You don't want to just round it. Your first instinct might be, oh, well, let's round this. And that would be okay for that one, because that would round it to 2633 or whatever. And that would be fine. Except for these other ones, rounding would still leave them at 20.0. Even if you can't put 0 digits for round, it's still going to try and, it'll still put a 0.0 on there. So we actually want an extra 0 in there. So what we're going to do for meal is we're going to put a :2f. And then we'll do the same thing with tip amount. We'll do :2f. And then for total, that should do the same thing there. So let me run this and see how it works out. And I'll put in 20. And I'll put in 25 again. I'll stay consistent. And I have $20, I have $5, and I have $26.32. The only thing you might want to do is just put dollar signs in front of the curly brackets so that it looks more like money. And I'll run it one more time. And this time I'll put 23. I'll just put it decimal just to see nothing gets messed up. Should be close to the same. And your meal is $20.23. Your tip is $5.06, which you would probably just say $5. and there's your total, which it'll be. So everything looks okay. That works okay, and I did it with 3 lines of calculations, which definitely took me more ahead of time. This is kind of a calculation here, but this is kind of an intro variable. It's not really an input. I don't know if I'd put it with inputs, but it's something that you need. This is a standard one. This is your, it's a constant, so if that's not going to change unless the state of New Jersey changes it, this won't really change throughout. We converted it up here to a decimal, and then we just kind of did calculations, and we added things together in here. So that's EX4 tax or EX4 TipTaxCalc.